Learning moments. Film days. Flew to PEI with art director to photograph a fisherman on his boat for an annual report. An older gentleman whose face had witnessed a lot of sun and seawater. A sweet guy, somewhat in awe that these two blokes from Waterloo had come all this way to take his portrait. I exposed several rolls of color transparency film, and we headed off back to the loo. 2 days after our return, I received the processed film from the lab, time, right? And laid all the images out on the light table. The AD looked them all over and made his choice very quickly. I tended to prefer viewing several times over a day or two. Just my way. Looking through a loupe, my comment was, "What? His left eye is almost completely closed." His response was, "True, but he looks the most genuine in this one." Looking them all over a couple more times that day, I saw he was right. We learn a lot in moments like that. To this day, I try to honor those in front of my camera in a similar fashion, looking for the genuine. I did 4 head and shoulder portraits for an organization the other day. The day after sending them their portraits, I received this lovely response. Quote, "These are incredible. We greatly appreciate your talent." Holy mackerel, made my month, perhaps the year. It's amazing how a comment like that can shift one's whole perspective. You never know what you might say to someone, almost in passing, that will fill them with so much life, hope, resilience, excitement, and more. And I think that's ultimately our role as coaches, educators, teachers, is to fill people up. I'm reminded of the day before I was to defend my MEd thesis. I was incredibly and unusually uptight. I received an email from a prof, an external member from another university I'd never met. I'd shared the photos from my thesis. Of course, I'm going to include photos, right? With her the day before. Her comment in the email, "David, I'm really looking forward to our conversation tomorrow." Incredible! With a single word, she shifted my whole perspective. I was now looking forward to a conversation versus being horrified defending my thesis. I might call it a mentoring moment. Not only did it change my perspective, it shifted once again this whole notion of what teaching could be, what it can look like at its very best. We rarely know when something said encouragingly can change a person's whole day, even color moments for an entire life. I had a first-year college student who continually relied on her friend for guidance on processing her photos. I suggested she try on her own, as I recognized she was an intelligent young woman and would likely be showing her friend a thing or two in no time. She turned to me, wide-eyed, saying no one had ever said that to her before. Imagine. She dove into creating her own fine images the rest of the semester. Let me share one last experience. I was in grade 2 or 3 in Montreal. The gymnasium was full of families as we presented our various gymnastic skills to the school. All the gymnasts were lined up outside the gym with a parent, mostly dads. I turned to my father saying, "I'm so nervous." He turned calmly to me saying, "That's okay. It means you're going to do a great job." I nailed my exercise on the vaulting horse. And that moment continues to empower me when faced with a task I'm nervous about. Those nerves, that fear, remains a powerful source of constructive energy almost 60 years later. Oddly and regretfully, I never told my dad how his thoughtful words had empowered me for a lifetime. I learned quickly in the classroom how important being authentic was. Being honest, while empathetic, remains important to me as a teacher, coach. So often, the most powerful learning moments occur within a conversation, a sublime moment of connection and understanding. It's a wonder. So what I thought I would do now is I pulled some photos fairly quickly. I took some time, I was careful, but they probably might strike you as being somewhat odd, maybe even unrelated, but it is something that personally I do enjoy to do. I mean, I've done a lot of photographs that are depicting something obvious related to a story and picks up a storyline. I remember a fellow I worked with many years ago on annual reports, and he told me that the whole idea of the photograph in an annual report was to capture somebody's attention, pull them in, lead them into reading the caption, and if the caption's written well, it will lead the person into the story of the annual report, because obviously annual reports can be a little dry, right? And that made a lot of sense to me. But one of the things I love to do now is to almost create maybe a little bit of tension, a pushback between what's being shared in type form or written form or read in this case, and the image itself. So this one is probably a little more, one of the more playful of the lot, because we're talking about film days, and this kind of feeds back to me, you know, those processes with silver and gelatin and chemistry, so that it's a subtle play between this visual of a bubble frozen in ice and the chemistry movement in photography. The next one really refers something more to the effect of that last line. You never know what you might say to someone almost in passing that will tell them with so much and fill them with so much life, hope, resilience, excitement, and more. And this is in the winter, obviously. There are no leaves on the branches. We don't see snow, but it's pretty clear. And so we're in a transition here between being asleep and being awakened and coming alive in the spring. And that speaks to me about potential, and the potential that we have as individuals to uplift and help people, to guide them, to excite them, versus controlling them and defining what it is they should be trying to say. And that's certainly not the manner in which I like to work. I like to create excitement for yourself, to help you see what you're doing and accomplishing, and have a dialogue about it. That's hugely important, the dialogue part. This is the reference was to when I had to defend my MEd thesis, and the way that woman, that teacher, just turned things around for me. And to me, that was such a revealing moment around the potential within a formal educational environment such as this, and taking it outside of that formality and making it something greater and bolder and more empowering. And I think really I came across this at a school, local school, in 2019. And I thought this is such a neat idea to take the classroom outside, not completely novel, but to add a blackboard and things like that, even as a potential place where students can can doodle and draw with chalk and at recess. There's so much potential within that particular image. And then this image, a little more negative than the rest, I would say, is the way I see it, that what looks to me like something that people would speak into and to, I can't remember, the megaphone, I guess it's called, and to shout out instructions or whatever, and the 3 seats in the background. And just to that experience of that young lady who had never been told that she's intelligent before in her life, and she's in her late teens at this point, as I recall. And I think, wow, what opportunity lost. And all it took was just a little nudge from me saying, hey, you're bright. I can tell the way you talk about things, et cetera, et cetera. It sort of opened a door. Hopefully that door remained open for her. I don't know if it did. But I think, again, it's our role, our best role as educators, to provide that kind of encouragement, that kind of empowerment. And this goes with the story of my dad and my experience of him empowering me with that not to fear something, to embrace it, because by embracing it, you empower yourself. Because that fear, think about it, it is a powerful feeling, right? And if you can use that in a positive way, wow, that's great. And so there's a bit of there's an element of time here between the car tracks going through, the flurries fluttering down with the light just spilling over the top of that wall, creating a bit of a flare in my lens, left intentionally, I might add, because that's the mystery part. We don't know what we say is going to impact somebody. We want it to be, I'm sure my dad wanted to encourage me, and it was definitely a positive thing to say, but he didn't know it was going to impact the rest of my life the way it did, especially because the outcome was positive as well, right? So we never know for sure. There's a mysterious element to it, and there's a magic about it that I think is well worth pursuing. And this last one, to me, just the wonder window it speaks volumes to this whole process. It is a wonder. This whole idea of photography is a wonder. To be able to record a moment and freeze it in time in any way you want, to create some sort of message that you want, and dialogue about it is a huge opportunity to grow as an image maker. And it allows us to, I've had so many experiences exploring photography, and I've said this before recently in a blog, where I really don't know where I'm headed. This is my personal work. I don't know where I'm headed with I'm pursuing something on an ongoing basis. And at the end, when I start putting the images together, there's often a great big reveal going, oh my gosh, either this is really exciting, this is really cool, or as a COVID-19 experience about 6 months in, I looked at the images that I put together and the coolness and darkness in them. I went, wow, I need to look at this. This is telling me there's more going on here in my heart and soul, my mind, and I need to look at it and evaluate and move forward. So the power of photography, the power of being creative is beyond just taking a picture. It has so much opportunity to illustrate what we're experiencing in our lives, not just bearing witness to. That's another great thing about photography. It can be just witnessing a moment, a place, and that's fantastic as well. But it can also be different than that. There's lots of different avenues. And this is something that I love to explore, is putting images that are not necessarily related, but I relate them. I force that relationship, and it expands the meaning. I started doing that actually when I first started studying photography in my last year, Ryerson. And so there's lots of opportunities, different opportunities for exploring photography, illustrative, creative. I've done it all. I mean, I've worked as a corporate photographer, I've worked as a product photographer, and I do my own creative work, and it's just such a wondrous medium in this way, how broad and it can be. And I'm going to do this once again. I'm going to reference Bernice Abbott, who at 78 told me, I took it to me, she was still learning photography at 78. Thanks for listening.